Western diplomacy. We have to get through this whole Suez crisis, okay? On the 1st of August, 1956, a tripartite meeting was opened at 10 Downing Street between British Foreign Secretary Selwyn Lloyd and U.S. Ambassador Robert D. Murphy and French Foreign Affairs Minister Christian Pineau. Fuck these names. Almost immediately after the nationalization, Eisenhower suggested to Eden a conference of maritime nations that use the canal. The British preferred to invite the most important countries, but the Americans believed that inviting as many as possible amid maximum publicity would affect world opinion. Invitations went to the 8 surviving signatories of the Constantinople Convention. I believe this convention regulated use initially of the Suez Canal, I believe, or that was part of it. Is a treaty concerning the use of the Suez Canal in Egypt. It was signed, yeah, okay. And the 16 other largest users of the canal. Australia, Ceylon, some fake country that is going to exist for a little bit and then not anymore. Denmark, Egypt, Ethiopia, France, West Germany. Lame. Greece, India, Indonesia, Iran, Italy, Japan, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Pakistan, Portugal, the Soviet Union, Spain, Sweden, Turkey, the United Kingdom, and the United States. All except Egypt, which sent an observer, and used India and the Soviet Union to represent its interests. Ceylon equals Sri Lanka. And Greece accepted the invitation, and the 22 nations representatives met in London from the 16th to the 23rd of August of... Is this 56? 1956. 15 of the nations supported the American-British-French position of international operation of the canal. Pakistan chose its Western allies over its sympathy for Egypt's anti-Western position, despite resulting in great domestic controversy. Ceylon, Indonesia and the Soviet Union supported India's competing proposal, which Nasser had pre-approved, of international supervision only. India criticized Egypt's seizure of the canal, but insisted that its ownership and operation now not change. The majority of 18 chose 5 nations to negotiate with Nasser in Cairo, led by Menzies, while their proposal for international operation of the canal would go to the Security Council. Menzies was he the Australian guy? Fuck. I don't know what I would look up for this. I don't want to lose my thing. Australian politician and lawyer who served as the 12th Prime Minister. Yes, okay. Why the fuck is Australia being chose to lead the negotiations? Cringe. Pig Iron Bob Menzies. He sold the metal to the Japanese that came back as fighter planes. Behazed. While their proposal for international operation of the canal would go to the Security Council. Menzies' 7th of September official communique to Nasser presented a case for compensation for the Suez Canal Company and the establishment of principles for the future use of the canal that would ensure that it would continue to be an international waterway operated free of politics or national discrimination, and with financial structure so secure and an international confidence so high that an expanding and improving future for the canal could be guaranteed. And called for a convention to recognize Egyptian sovereignty of the canal, but for the establishment of an international body to run the canal. Nasser saw such measures as a derogation from Egyptian sovereignty and rejected Menzies' proposals. This is worth. Initial proposal would have allowed Egyptian sovereignty, I can't spell that fucking word, sovereignty to be recognized while maintaining an international operation of the canal. International body. Yeah, international armors. Nasser rejected. Dumbass. Pillow stream, 20 euros. Destiny, your logic on S&D is fine. Search and destroy? Oh, supply and demand. But it presupposes a decrease in demand for the appreciation of housing prices to decrease. I.e., you are saying people are buying homes at the same rate because people are buying homes less. Okay. But it presupposes a decrease in demand for the appreciation of house prices to decrease. You're saying people are buying homes at the same rate because people, I don't know. I can't. I'm too stupid. I just can't read it. I'm sorry. I tried. Menzies hinted to Nasser that Britain and France might use force to resolve the crisis, but Eisenhower openly opposed the use of force, and Menzies left Egypt without success. Instead of the 18-nation proposal, the United States proposed an association of canal users that would set rules for its operation. 14 of the other nations, not including Pakistan, agreed. Britain, in particular, believed that violation of the association rules would result in military force, but after Eden made a speech to this effect in Parliament on the 12th of September, the U.S. Ambassador Dulles insisted, "We do not intend to shoot our way through the canal." The United States worked hard through diplomatic channels to resolve the crisis without resorting to conflict. The British and French reluctantly agreed to pursue the diplomatic avenue, but viewed it as merely an attempt to buy time, during which they continued their military preparations. The British, Washington's closest ally, ignored Eisenhower's pointed warning that the American people would not accept a military solution. God, why are you guys so war-hungry in Europe? British and French hungry for military intervention to solve potential canal problems, despite Eisenhower's disapproval. On September 25th, 1956, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Harold Macmillan, met informally with Eisenhower at the White House. I don't know what the fuck this is. The Chancellor of the... What is this, a British position? Was a British statesman, conservative politician, was the Prime Minister of the United States from 57 to 63 after this. Hopefully not a meth addict, like Eden was. Oh, equivalent to the Secretary of the Treasury. Cringe words. Macmillan misread Eisenhower's determination to avoid war and told Eden that the Americans would not in any way oppose the attempt to topple Nasser. Though Eden had known Eisenhower for years and had many direct contacts with him during the crisis, he also misread the situation. The Americans refused to support any move that could be seen as imperialism or colonialism, seeing the U.S. as the champion of decolonization. It is kind of funny that the United States largely skirts a lot of the imperialist or colonization bullshit kind of for these times, just because we were a colony ourselves and we had the whole of North America to kind of colonize ourselves, but we took it from the Native Americans, so people don't really see it that way. So yeah, get fucked, you European scum fucks. Eisenhower felt the crisis had to be handled peacefully. He told Eden that American public opinion would not support a military solution. Eden and other leading British officials incorrectly believed Nasser's support for Palestinian Fedayeen against Israel, as well as his attempts to destabilize pro-Western regimes in Iraq and other Arab states, would deter the U.S. from intervening with the operation. Eisenhower specifically warned that the Americans and the world would be outraged unless all peaceful routes had been exhausted, and even that the eventual price might become far too heavy. London hoped that Nasser's engagement with communist states would persuade the Americans to accept British and French actions if they were presented as a fait accompli. This proved to be a critical miscalculation. Franco-British-Israeli objectives. Britain was anxious lest it lose efficient access to the remains of its empire. Both Britain and France were eager that the canal should remain open as an important conduit of oil. What did the British Empire look like in 1955? British Empire in 1956. What do they even have at this point? I'm so curious. Circled by British possessions and dependencies from the Caribbean to the west of Singapore, Malaya, and Hong Kong in the east. You're correct on IR and demand, but it hurts supply since it costs more to borrow to build, and people, that would sell / move are less likely to do so if their current IR is good. Source econ degree. Sure. I mean, that's why I said there's a lot of countervailing forces, right? Because if interest rates increase, people might be less willing to sell, which also drops the supply of housing, which could increase the demand. So I understand what you're saying, but I'm pretty sure, despite all of the countervailing forces involved, that as a general trend, a decrease in interest rates, I believe, should lead to an increase in housing costs or housing prices. Like, broadly speaking, I believe that's the case. There might be different factors in local markets and different things that push price in one way or another, but I believe, broadly speaking, increase in interest rate generally means a slowdown, a deceleration in cost or price of housing, and a decrease in interest rate generally means. I believe, broadly speaking, I think that's the trend. I could be wrong. Link me a trend chart. Maybe that's not necessarily the case. What is the deal with the just send special forces idea? Hamas is too big to deal with like we did with bin Laden. Spec ops are going to Gaza, take out a few Hamas targets and get surrounded. Yeah, I'm not too sure. I don't know what people mean when they say. I think people think special forces are like Call of Duty troops that can go in and defeat entire armies. But Lycan was also saying that, but I don't believe that's what special forces do. But I could be wrong, yeah. Destiny, correct, but that's not what is happening. Is reality or your hypothetical worth more? What do you mean that's not what's happening? You don't think housing pricing increase hasn't slowed? I don't know. Show me a first derivative of housing prices. We can look. Oh, okay. I'm getting multiple percent, yeah. Hold on. Anna Kasparian saying send in spec ops, dude. Yeah, it's just kind of like a catch-all, right? Yeah. I like how Destiny is referring to the rate of change of housing prices as first derivatives, like he said, any experience with a Calc 1 class. Okay. Why am I getting one guy? It's so hard by my YouTube chat. Okay. Why am I getting... I'm not going to get one guide. I'm not going to do it. Okay. Destiny's economics takes trigger the fuck out of me. Wicked Demurs, you're a tier 4 sub. Wait, what have I said that's wrong? I don't even think I've said anything controversial. Stop talking about housing. Nobody cares. Or wait, is he triggering me because he's a tier 4? You are wrong short term is the point. I literally said that. It might be the case that in the short term, a dramatic increase in housing prices means a dramatic decrease in homes available in the market, which causes a huge dip in supply. It may be in a short-term effect. Maybe housing prices do rise faster than they would have under low-interest environments because housing construction subs well. That could be the case. But I'm pretty sure in the long term, Destiny, right? Okay. Your housing price take is the IQ curve meme. High rates are bad. High rates are bad are the low and high end. The elasticities will never actually work out the way you describe on the net. Really? You don't think if we run a 0% interest rate meme forever, you don't think housing prices will continue to just inflate like crazy if people know that there's such easy access to money for homes? You don't think that's... No matter what Destiny say, Destiny's wrong. Wicked Demerge is a certified retard. Why are you reading anything he says? We can just, you know what? Fuck it. I could be wrong. Let's just look it up. Change in housing prices compared to, what would I say, like federal funds rate or compared to interest rates? What do I say, interest rates? If you look at historical trends, higher home prices do tend to correlate with lower interest rates because more people are looking to buy homes when mortgages are low. Okay, is there somebody else that disagrees with this? When interest rates are going up, the cost of owning a home becomes more expensive due to the high interest rate, which reduces demand. Okay, is there somebody that disagrees? How high mortgage rates have historically affected home prices. Annual change in mortgage rates. This is kind of a weak correlation, maybe, so. Oh, this could be true too. Higher mortgage rates and higher interest rates more generally have historically been associated with periods of stronger economic growth. So even though the interest is going up, the demand increases a bit because it's usually associated with time. Okay, so yeah, fuck you. I think I'm right. Fuck off. Link me something different, okay? Have you tried using Notion? Okay. Boom. Boom. Oh shit, I just saw. Rage Puppy specifically did not include any other variables. What do we, oh no. Hold on. I'm not getting triggered by you. Boom, okay. Nice Hassan roleplay. True. Well, hold on. The difference between Hassan and me is I actually try to read like all my criticism in chat to see if I'm incorrect or something. What Hassan does is he picks the worst and dumbest comment in chat that's the easiest to respond to, and then he spends the next 20 minutes fighting that most straw man horrible version. Oh. Hassan is liking more and more tweets shooting it. Good. He mad, and I love that. I love that he's mad. I love that he goes to sleep thinking about me in his $3 million mansion, collecting 7 figures every single month. I love it. I love that he thinks about me so much. Okay. Destiny, are interest rates correlated to general growth of the economy? Probably. That'd be my guess. My guess is going to be lower interest rates, but it's paradoxical. Lower interest rates are probably correlated with bad economies, but lower interest rates probably stimulate more economic growth. But you would lower interest rate in a bad economy because you need the economic growth. Higher interest rates are probably associated with better economies, even though they slow down economic growth because you would raise interest rates in a good economy. So it'd be like a paradoxical relationship, I think. But it's not really a paradox, but it seems to be counterindicated. But who knows? Also, I'm retarded. I'm a music school dropout. I can tell you about dominant sevenths. Resolving. Oh, I didn't go to the record. There you go. That's all I know about, okay? Why are you reading about the Suez Crisis at all? It's more related to British losing status as a superpower than anything related to Israel-Palestine. Well, because I believe that Israel was a pretty major player, I think, in this crisis, and it's giving me so much more perspective on the world. Because my world history, especially the intricacies of world history, are pretty poor, but it's giving me more perspectives on like the world of politics after World War II, how Arab nations felt about each other. Like I've learned like general things that I wouldn't have learned just focusing on Israel, right? Like the idea between all this intra-Arab conflict where these nations are like vying to be like powers of like the Arab world or whatever. I don't really know. I didn't know any of this shit existed. All I've ever heard historically growing up is like Sunni Shia divide. That's all I've ever fucking heard. I didn't know that Egypt or this Nasser guy or that there were these huge fights for leadership of the Arab world, post-world. I don't know any of this shit. So it's good. It's just nice to know it all. Okay, sorry. Back to reading. Okay. Okay. Suez is one of those things that AP history hits in high school. One of the big things that a lot of high school regular. Oh, cool, good. Then there you go. Then all the AP kids can realize how retarded I am, and all the normal people can do this. What the fuck is this shit? Are people doing fatwas on my fucking subreddit? What is this shit? Appears to be some kind of alien language. Why would you? Okay. Hebrew. The sub-settlement is complete. It's time to arm yourself. After the Four Minds agent has armed you, eliminate all tampering. More instructions below. Agent Stefan, your dedicated work is appreciated. Suro sends his best wishes. Why? Okay. You guys are unhinged. You're going to scare off all of our new visitors. Or you're going to keep attracting them, I guess. I don't know. Britain was anxious lest it lose efficient access to the remains of its empire. Both Britain and France were eager that the canal should remain open as an important conduit of oil. Real quick, French-Algerian War was in the 50s. Was it before or after this? 54 to 62. Okay, so it was kind of ongoing or still brewing or in full swing or something. Okay. Our new visitors should see how well you do in the Rift. Big East. Stop. Both the French and British felt that Nasser should be removed from power. The French held the Egyptian president responsible for assisting the anti-colonial rebellion in Algeria. The Egyptian president responsible for assisting. Oh, okay. France was nervous about the growing influence that Nasser exerted on its North African colonies and protectorates. Israel wanted to reopen the Straits of Tiran, leading to the Gulf of Aqaba to Israeli shipping, and saw the opportunity to strengthen its southern border and to weaken what it saw as a dangerous and hostile state. This was particularly felt in the forms of attacks injuring approximately 1,300 civilians emanating from the Egyptian-held Gaza Strip. Israel's interest in war was damaging, or we'll say weakening, a hostile state. Egypt held Gaza Strip plus surrounding countries via Egyptian-supported Palestinian Fedayeen. I don't know how to fucking spell this shit. I don't even give a fuck. God damn it. Just please autocorrect it. Fedayeen. Was responsible for attacks injuring approximately 1,300 civilians. The Israelis were also deeply troubled by Egypt's procurement of large amounts of Soviet weaponry that included 530 armored vehicles, of which 230 were tanks, 500 guns, 150 MiG-15 jet fighters, 50 Ilyushin Tu-28 bombers, submarines, and other naval craft. The influx of this advanced weaponry altered an already shaky balance of power. Israel was alarmed by the Czech arms deal and believed it had only a narrow window of opportunity to hit Egypt's army. Additionally, Israel believed Egypt had formed a secret alliance with Jordan and Syria. Let's get all of this up here, actually. Boom, boom. I believe Egypt was unable at this point to purchase a fuck ton of weaponry from... No, wait, I think they started buying from France, didn't they? Israel was also scared about Egypt's large procurement of weapons and feared they'd forged a secret alliance with Jordan and Syria. Forces. British troops were well-trained, experienced, and had good morale, but suffered from the economic and technological limitations imposed by post-war austerity. The 16th Independent Parachute Brigade Group, which was intended to be the main British strike force against Egypt, was heavily involved in the Cyprus emergency, which led to a neglect of paratroop training in favor of counterinsurgency operations. The Cyprus emergency, from 55 to 59, also known as the Greek Cypriot War of Independence, was a conflict fought in British Cyprus between 55 and 59. Greek Cypriot right-wing right-wing nationalist guerrilla organization began an armed campaign in support of the end of the British colonial rule and the unification of Cyprus and Greece. Okay. Cyprus is the territory of the Ottoman Empire from the late 16th century until it became a protectorate of the UK under nominal Ottoman suzerainty. Cyprus forming an annex to the British Empire after the Ottomans had entered World War I on the side of the Central Powers against the British, and was initially governed by a military administration until 25, when it was proclaimed by the Crown Colony of Cyprus. Several unsuccessful offers made to Greece by the British to cede Cyprus in exchange for military concessions. Now it sets attention to transfer its Suez military. Okay. Insurgency in 55. Shit got fucked. British encountered great difficulty obtaining effective intelligence. Okay, and was supported by the majority of the Greek Cypriot population. They were hampered by a general manpower, which was caused by the Suez crisis and the Malayan emergency. Fuck, Britain, what are you doing? Towards the late 1950s, they enjoyed more success. At least 14 Cypriots arrested on suspicion to be OK members were tortured and then killed by UK forces during detention. Everyone asking for league all the time just wants to punish destiny and eternity. Tournament team when you can still get Diamond 1 on drugs. Good one. Oh shit, we're not playing music. Oh shit. Cyprus became independent. The British government agreed to pay $1 million total to 33 Cypriots who had been allegedly tortured by British forces during the uprising. They include a woman aged 16 at the time who said she had been detained and repeatedly raped by soldiers, and a man who had lost a kidney as a result of his interrogation. The payout followed the declassification of government documents in 2012. But Foreign Minister Alan Duncan stated that the settlement does not constitute any admission of liability, that the government has settled the case in order to draw a line under this litigation and to avoid further escalation of costs. Interesting. Okay. That was, so Cyprus was revolting. The Malayan emergency, also known as the Anti-British National Liberation War, was a guerrilla war fought, this is from 48 to 60, between communist pro-independence fighters of the Malayan National Liberation Army and the military forces of the Federation of Malaya, British Empire, and Commonwealth. The communists fought to win independence from Malaya, from the British Empire, to establish a socialist economy. Ragebot, why are you... Is this guy still posting more on my subreddit? I've had... this guy was posting a Kick Chat all yesterday, and I think he's made, like, multiple threads on this. When I was on a Kick or Keep episode, I think I said something to the effect of, like, listen, the only thing that's going to change the outcome of this is, like, basically Israel probably has to kill all the Palestinians. It's, like, the only... It seems like that's the only way this thing is ever going to end. And I probably said it, like, more... It sounded more true when I say it, but obviously I'm not pro-genocide. I don't think that's good. I just said that it seems like the only way the conflict is going to end is if one side completely eliminates the other. But yeah, this guy has become like obsessed with this talking point. I think he was like sharing it. He kept linking me to the stream over and over again yesterday in Kick Chat. That was the thing that I clicked on at the end of stream. I just lost a massive amount of respect for my boy Steven, blurting out something like, I'm pro-genocide at this point, and then completely pivoting from the criticism. What's up with that? Destiny was not saying, I think this is what most likely to happen at this point. He clearly and explicitly said this is what he thinks should happen. Like, yeah, okay. Filthy Casual. Destiny, with all your Israel-Palestine research, can you summarize your current opinion? Yeah. Jew leader master. At Destiny, what makes you want to research this topic so intensely? Because it comes up over and over again, and there's a lot of peripheral history, so... Wow, okay, stop asking me why I'm reading this. I read... Okay. Say L genocide. Can everybody in all my chats please keep saying L genocide? Okay. Malayan emergency. Okay. The Royal Navy could project formidable power through the guns of its warships and aircraft flown from its carriers, but lacked amphibious capability. The Royal Navy had just undergone a major and innovative carrier modernization program. The Royal Air Force had just introduced 2 long-range bombers, the Vickers Valiant and the English Electric Canberra, as a British first-generation jet-powered medium bomber. But owing to their recent entry into service, the Royal Air Force had not yet established proper bombing techniques for these aircraft. Despite this, General Sir Charles Keightley, the commander of the invasion force, believed that air power alone was sufficient to defeat Egypt. By contrast, General Hugh Stockwell, the task force's ground commander, believed that methodical and systematic armored operations centered on the Centurion battle tank would be the key to victory. It's pronounced Canberra, not Canberra, it's Canberra. The Centurion was the primary British Army main battle tank of the post-World War II period. It's considered one of the most successful post-war tank designs. Saw combat until the 1980s. French troops were experienced and well-trained, but suffered from cutbacks imposed by post-war politics of economic austerity. In 1956, the French armed forces was heavily involved in the Algerian War, which made operations against Egypt a major distraction. French paratroopers of the elite Régiment des Parachutistes Coloniaux were extremely experienced, battle-hardened, and very tough soldiers. Thank Jockstar Plays for the gifted subber, who had greatly distinguished themselves in the fighting in Indochina and in Algeria. Is Indochina like the name for like in the Southeast Asian region? Is this? I don't even know what the fuck country this fucking is. I have no fucking idea. French Indochina was a grouping of the French colonial territories in Africa. Was it? Or oh no. Okay, no, never mind. Just like Africa for a second. It was in Southeast Asia. Indochina, the countries of Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, formerly associated with France, first within its empire and later within the French Union. The men of the RPC followed a shoot first, ask questions later policy towards civilians, first adopted in Vietnam, which was to lead to the killing of a number of Egyptian civilians. The rest of the French troops were described by the American military historian Derek Varble as competent, but not outstanding. The main French and Israeli tank, the AMX-13, was designed for mobile flanking operations, which led to a tank that was lightly armored but agile. Who made this? Is a French light tank produced from 1952 to 1987. Wow, Nate, thanks for gifting a kick chat sub. And was exported to more than 26 other nations. Why do I care about this Rosanna Pansino? Wasn't this Husky's girlfriend that did the cooking stuff? General André Bouffray, who served as Stockwell's subordinate, favored a swift campaign of movement in which the main objective was to encircle the enemy. Throughout the operation, Bouffray, if I'm pronouncing this correctly, she's making a massive deal of being edited in Mr. Beast's video. Okay. Please read the Rosanna Pansino. Is it worth it? Once we're done with the Suez Canal, if we've got time, I'll read it, okay? The Suez Crisis. I don't think we've got that much left to go here because we're getting to the actual conflict, okay? Throughout the operation, Bouffray proved himself to be more aggressive than his British counterparts, always urging that some bold step be taken at once. Oh, is it Beaufort? The French Navy had a powerful carrier force that was excellent for projecting power inland, but, like its British counterpart, suffered from a lack of landing craft. Israel. American military historian Derek Varble called the Israeli Defense Forces the best military force in the Middle East, while at the same time suffering from deficiencies such as immature doctrine, faulty logistics, and technical inadequacies. The IDF's Chief of Staff, Major General Moshe Dayan, encouraged aggression, initiative, and ingenuity among the Israeli officer corps while ignoring logistics and armored operations. Dayan, a firm infantryman, preferred that arm of the service at the expense of armor, which Dayan saw as clumsy, pricey, and suffering from frequent breakdowns. At the same time, the IDF had a rather disorganized logistics arm, which was put under severe strain when the IDF invaded the Sinai. Most of the IDF weapons in 1956 came from France. The main IDF tank was the AMX-13, and the main aircraft were the Dassault Mystère IVA and the Ouragan. Jesus, this thing looks like a death box. When people criticize you for using Wikipedia for research, where do you think they get their research from? I can't imagine they're actually reading books or listening to primary source interviews or something, but maybe they secretly do it. No, nobody reads books. No, especially people that say read this book. They haven't actually read the books. You can super quickly tell when somebody's actually read it on a topic or not. And when they have, they don't just say read a book. Positive, thanks for the $5. Early jets all look like suicide machines. I mean, if you're Japanese. Superior pilot training was to give the Israeli Air Force an unbeatable edge over their Egyptian opponents. The Israeli Navy consisted of 2 destroyers, 7 frigates, 8 minesweepers, several landing craft, and 14 torpedo boats. Wow, DJ Dreamy, thanks for the tier 5 subber, my dude. Egypt. In the Egyptian armed forces, politics, rather than military competence, was the main criterion for promotion. The Egyptian commander, Field Marshal Abdel Hakim Amir, was a purely political appointee who owed his position to his close friendship with Nasser. A heavy drinker, he would prove himself grossly incompetent as a general during the crisis. In 1956, the Egyptian military was well equipped with weapons from the Soviet Union, such as T-34 and IS-3 tanks, MiG-15 fighters, Ilyushin Tu-28 bombers, Su-100 self-propelled guns, and assault rifles. What's a self-propelled gun? What does that even mean? It's a tank, but no armor. Artillery on a tank. Oh. So this is like lacking armor, or... An SPG is a lightly armored RD tank. They're critical in Ukraine. Okay. No, it has armor. It's made for indirect fire. Oh, so like when I pull out and I come on your mom's ear. Rigid lines between officers and men in the Egyptian army led to a mutual mistrust and contempt between officers and the men who served under them. Egyptian troops were excellent in defensive operations, but had little capacity for offensive operations owing to the lack of rapport and effective small unit leadership. Invasion. Oh my god. It's not even here? End of hostilities. Bro, it's a whole other thing? Bro, why are you broing me like this? This is backing up to July. We've already read through this. Franco-Israeli planning. We've got Moshe Dayan, advised Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion that Israel should attack Egypt at the first chance, but Ben-Gurion said he preferred to attack Egypt with the aid of France. Guy Mollet was this guy's name, not Guy, right? Guy Mollet had embarked upon a dual policy of attacking Egypt with Britain, and if the British backed out, as Mollet believed they might have, with Israel. On the 22nd of October, 1956, during negotiations leading to the Protocol of Sèvres, Ben-Gurion... What is this? Well, here, I think it'll explain it here. Ben-Gurion gave an explanation to foreign dignitaries of Israel's overall strategy for the Middle East. His main objection to the English plan was that Israel would be branded as the aggressor while Britain and France would pose as peacemakers. Instead, he presented a comprehensive plan which he himself called fantastic for the recognition of the Middle East. Jordan, he observed, was not viable as an independent state and should therefore be divided. Iraq would get the East Bank in return for a promise to settle the Palestinian... What is the East Bank? Is that east of the Jordan River? It must be, right? It must be. It's what's east of the Jordan, right? And then west of the Jordan is the West Bank. Yeah, okay. I wonder how, is this like, does that mean like all of the country of Jordan? You seriously don't know what East Bank is? No, I've never heard of it referred to as the East Bank. You fucking... Sorry. Okay. Wait, where were I? Okay. Iraq would get the East Bank in return for a promise to settle the Palestinian refugees there and to make peace with Israel, while the West Bank would be attached to Israel as a semi-autonomous region. Lebanon suffered from having a large Muslim population, which was concentrated in the south. The problem could be solved by Israel's expansion up to the Litani River, thereby helping to turn Lebanon into a more compact Christian state. Litany River? What the fuck is this? Bro, what the fuck river is? Oh, is it this thing? So what? Israel was proposing to expand. I'm guessing this is decently into Lebanese territory. Okay. Okay. The problem could be solved by Israel's expansion up to the Litany River, thereby helping to turn Lebanon into a more compact Christian state. Israel declares its intention to keep her forces for the purpose of permanent annexation of the entire area east of the El Arish Abu Aguila, Nakhl Sharm El Sheikh, in order to maintain for the long term and freedom of navigation in the Straits of Eilat, and in order to free herself from the scourge of the infiltrators and from the danger posed by the Egyptian army bases in Sinai. I told him about the discovery of oil in southern and western Sinai, and it would be good to tear this peninsula from Egypt because it did not belong to her. Rather, it was the English who stole it from the Turks when they believed that Egypt was in their pocket. I suggested laying down a pipeline from Sinai to Haifa to refine the oil. Okay. So Egypt's ideal plan involved taking territory north into Lebanon, having the West Bank run as a semi-autonomous state attached to Israel, and having Iraq claim everything on the East Bank, because Israel believed Jordan to be an unstable state. Also encouraged the... So what, they're saying the English should have stolen the Sinai, or we're taking the Sinai back, or... It'd be good to tear this peninsula from Egypt because no longer, rather, it was the English who stole it from the Turks, and they believed that Egypt was in their pocket. I still know. And encourage, we'll just say, the taking of the Sinai Peninsula. Jesse, you're about to see why Eisenhower is a very based U.S. president, am I? Seems like for the whole time of this, Eisenhower is basically like telling everybody, like, figure your shit out and stop fucking fighting with each other, and don't you dare go fucking fight with each other. That's it. That's all I've seen from Eisenhower so far. Israel's ideal plan, not Egypt. It's the French, not Egypt, that made this plan. Wait, are you sure? Wait, did I read this wrong? Ben-Gurion gave an explanation to foreign dignitaries of Israel's overturners. His main objection to the English plan was that Israel would be branded as an aggressor, while Britain and France would pose as peacemakers. Instead, he presented a conference in which he also... Oh, wait. I'm sorry. Who's presenting this plan? That's important, actually. It's a secret agreement reached between the governments of Israel, France, and the UK during discussions. The protocol concerns their joint political and military collusion atop the Egyptian leader, Colonel General Abdel Nasser, by invading and occupying the Suez Canal in response to the president. It's the English plan. Who do you think is presenting it? His main objection to the English plan was that Israel would be branded as the aggressor. So this is a summary of the English plan, not the Israel. Oh, okay. Never mind. Because I was going to say, this This is pretty aggressive. This would play into the idea that Israel was like pretty conquest oriented or was trying to significantly expand their land. Okay. So this is the English plan. Are you sure about that? I thought this was Israel's alternative to the English plan. That's what it looked like, but it's... No, it's not the English plan. It is his alternative. Okay, let's just... It's Ben-Gurion telling what the English plan was. Wait, how did this song start in the middle of it? Okay. Of Israel's overall strategy for the Middle East, Schleim called this Ben-Gurion's grand design. His main objection to the English plan was that Israel be branded. Okay, no, this was Ben-Gurion's plan. Hold on. Okay. Ben-Gurion's grand plan. This was Ben-Gurion's plan. Okay, so yeah. Particularly noteworthy is at the last point, for it was included at Ben-Gurion's specific request, and it defined Israel's territorial aims, which were only tenuously related to the Suez Canal crisis. Israel declares its intention to keep her forces for the purpose of permanent annexation of the entire area east of the whatever. Okay, the Strait of Eilat. The fuck is this? Oh, is that just another name for the Strait of Tiran? Or is it part of, or is it in this area of the Strait of Tiran? Fuck me, dude. What are you guys doing? Eilat is the most south Israeli city. Damn, this place looks sick. Sorry. Okay. Gotcha, I see it, okay. Gulf of Aqaba. It's a vacation city, giga overpriced. The Red Sea. Damn, bro. How long do you think it took Jesus and everybody to walk? Or not Jesus, Moses and everybody to walk over this? Jesus could have just walked on top of it, you know? Okay, so where is the Strait of Tiran? Okay, whatever. It's just this shit. Okay. But I guess theoretically, if Egypt controls the Sinai, they could theoretically just close this down and say fuck you to any shipping in and out of here. It's the Straits of Tiran. There's two of them to the left and right of the Tiran Island. Yeah, I guess it makes sense. This is Tiran Island. Okay. Britain and France are required to support or at least commit themselves not to show opposition to these plans. This is what Israel demands as her share, the fruits of victory. My logical explanation for how Moses split the sea is high tide, low tide, not literally splitting the sea. I thought, hasn't biblical scholarship agreed that it was a mistranslation and they actually walked across the Sea of Reeds instead of the Red Sea? In which case, it was just kind of like a swampy marsh. It's not actually like the Red Sea. It's Sinai? Is it Sinai? Not Sinai? Is it Sinai? There is no evidence that Jews were actually in Egypt. Yeah, that's my understanding, is that there was never evidence of a massive Jewish presence in Egypt. That's just like part of the movies we watch every Christmas or something, I believe. Sinai? Sinai?
Sinai.
Sinai. Fuck you. Stop. The aim of destroying Nasser had pervaded the entire conference, and it was uppermost in Ben-Gurion's mind. This is a unique opportunity, he wrote, that two not-so-small powers will try to topple Nasser, and we shall not stand alone against him while he becomes stronger and conquers all the Arab countries, and maybe the whole situation in the Middle East will change according to my plan. France and Britain have a vital interest in the Suez Canal, he said forcefully. The Straits of Tiran are the state of Israel's Suez Canal. We intend to capture the Straits of Tiran, and we intend to stay there and thus ensure freedom of navigation to Eilat. The British officials then asked a number of questions about Israel's operational plans, evidently inspired by the fear that the Israel operation would not amount to a real act of war and that consequently Britain would not have a credible casus belli for military intervention. Will Israel issue a formal declaration of war? Ben-Gurion replied that Egypt's repeated violations of the armistice agreements made a declaration of war superfluous. Dayan retorted more bluntly, we will not declare, we will simply strike. In his diary, Ben-Gurion recorded the next day, I told him about the discovery of oil in southern and western Sinai, and that it would be good to tear this peninsula from Egypt because it did not belong to her. Rather, it was the English who stole it from the Turks when they believed that Egypt was in their pocket. I suggested laying down a pipeline from Sinai to Haifa to refine the oil, and Molay showed interest in the suggestion. Ilan Troen, director of the Ben-Gurion Research Institute and Archives, omits the plan, codenamed Fantastic by Ben-Gurion, from his account of Sevres, and instead offers as the Israeli motivation for the invasion of Egypt. So they're saying this dude was probably biased, I guess? Is that... Okay. Okay. October of 1956, Eden, after 2 months of pressure, finally and reluctantly agreed to French request to include Israel in Operation Revise. The British specify, I don't know what that means. So the British alliances with the Hashemite kingdoms of Jordan and Iraq had made the British very reluctant to fight alongside Israel, lest the ensuing backlash in the Arab world threaten London's friendships in Baghdad and Amman. The coming of winter weather in November meant that Eden needed a pretext to begin Revise as soon as possible, which meant that Israel had to be included. This was especially the case as many conservative backbenchers had expected Eden to launch operations against Egypt in the summer and were disappointed when Eden had instead chosen talks. By the fall of 1956, many Tory backbenchers were starting to grow restive about the government's seeming inability to start military action, and if Eden had continued to put off military action for the winter of 56 and 57, it's possible that his government might not have survived. 3 months after Egypt's nationalization of the Suez Canal Company, a secret meeting took place at the Sevres outside Paris. Britain and France enlisted Israeli support for an alliance against Egypt. The parties agreed that Israel would invade the Sinai. Britain and France would then intervene, purportedly to separate the warring Israeli and Egyptian forces, instructing both to withdraw to a distance of 16 kilometers from either side of the canal. Destiny, quick clip break. Well, if it's Quinn 69.
Faster, faster. People melt up. People, go, 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 go. Spam, spam. Literally spam. 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 Chat. Chat. Spam people meltdown. Spam people meltdown. 10 seconds. 10 seconds. Go. Wait, chat. Wait, it's bugged?
Cute. The British and the French would then argue that Egypt's control of such an important route was too tenuous, and that it needed to be placed under Anglo-French management. David Ben-Gurion did not trust the British in view of their treaty with Jordan, and he was not initially in favor of the plan, since it would make Israel alone look like the aggressor. However, he soon agreed to it, since such a good opportunity to strike back at Egypt might never again prevent itself. So under the Protocol of Sèvres, the following was agreed to. Sneaky. Okay. The Protocol of Sèvres. Was agreed to by, it would have been Israel, France, and Britain. And the UK, I guess I should say. On October 29th, Israel would invade the Sinai. On October 30th, Anglo-French ultimatum to demand both sides withdraw from Canal Zone. On October 31st, Britain and France would begin revise, which I'm guessing would take the Suez Canal under international control or something. Stockwell offered up Operation Musketeer, which was to begin with a 2-day air campaign which would see the British gain air superiority and place at Port Said. Musketeer called for the capture of Alexandria, which was the second largest city in Egypt, west of Cairo, right? Where is it? Here. Once that city had been taken in assault from the sea, British armored divisions would engage in a decisive battle of annihilation, somewhere south of Alexandria and north of Cairo. Annihilation is a military strategy in which an attacking army seeks to entirely destroy the military capacity of the opposing army. Musketeer would require thousands of troops, leading the British to seek out France as an ally to destroy the 300,000 strong Egyptian army. In his planned battle of annihilation, Stockwell estimated that he needed 80,000 troops, while at most the British army could spare was 50,000 troops. The French could supply the necessary 30,000 troops to make up the shortfall. One French officer recalled that Stockwell was, extremely excitable, gesticulating, keeping no part of him still, his hands, his feet, and even his head and shoulders perpetually on the go. He starts off by sweeping objects off the table with a swish of his swagger cane, or in his room by using it to make golf strokes with the flower vases and ashtrays. Those are the good moments. You will see him pass in an instant from the most cheerfully expressed optimism to a dejection that amounts to nervous depression. He is a cyclothymic? Was he a BPD boy? By turns courteous and brutal, refined and coarse, headstrong in some circumstances, hesitant and indecisive in others. He disconcerts by his unpredictable responses and the contradictions of which he is made up. One only of his qualities remains constant, his courage under fire. By contrast, the majority of the officers of the task force, both French and British, admired André Beaufort as an elegant yet tough general. Okay, I don't need all of this information. JJ McCullough uploaded a video on this conflict 2 minutes ago. Wait, really? Why the world is obsessed with Palestine. Maybe we'll watch it later. The American CIA was taking high-altitude photos of the Allied activities, and more details came from human sources in London, Paris, and Tel Aviv. CIA Chief Alan Dulles said that intelligence was well alerted as to what Israel and then Britain and France were likely to do. In fact, U.S. intelligence had kept the government informed. Okay, I don't know if I need anything else. I don't really need to know like every single. The Israeli border police militarized the Israeli-Jordan border, including the Green Line with the West Bank. During the first few hours of the war, Israeli Arab villages along the Jordanian border were placed under curfew. This resulted in the killings of 48 civilians in the Arab village of Kafr Qasim in an event known as the Kafr Qasim Massacre. The border policemen involved in the killings were later tried and imprisoned, with an Israeli court finding that the order to shoot civilians was blatantly illegal. This event had major effects on Israeli law relating to ethics in war and more subtle effects on the legal status of Arab citizens in Israel, who at the time were regarded as a fifth column. It's probably good to just have this as a note. The Kafr Qasim Massacre took place in Israeli Arab village of Kafr Qasim during the war, where Israel border police illegally killed Arab civilians returning from work during a curfew they were unaware of. 48 people died. Okay. Arab sources usually give the death toll as 49, as they include the unborn child of one of the women. The border policemen, men who were involved in the shooting, were trialed and jailed for 7 to 17 years. All of the sentences were later reduced, with some of those convicted receiving presidential pardons. Yikes. All sentences were later reduced, with some of the convicted receiving presidential pardons. Every convicted person was eventually released by 1959. November of 1959. Not a good look, Israel. Of those convicted, Gabriel Dahan was later placed in charge of Arab affairs by the city of Ramla. Yisakar Yiska Shadmi, the highest-ranking official prosecutor for the massacre, stated shortly before his death that he believed that his trial was staged to protect members of the Israeli political and military elite, including Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion, from taking responsibility for the massacre. The purpose was to portray the perpetrators as a group of rogue soldiers rather than people acting under higher orders. December of 2007, President of Israel Shimon Peres formally apologized for the massacre. In October of 2021, a joint list bill to have the massacre officially recognized was turned down in the Knesset. Okay. Early actions in southern Sinai. The IDF Chief of Staff General Moshe Dayan first planned to block the vital Mitla Pass. Dayan planned for the Battalion 890 of the Paratroop Brigade under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Raphael Eaton, a veteran of the 1948 Arab-Israeli War and future head of the IDF, to drop at Parker's Memorial near one of the defiles of the pass, Jebel Heaton? Maybe. The rest of the brigade, under the command of Colonel Ariel Sharon, would then advance to meet with the battalion and consolidate their holdings. On October 29th, Operation Kadesh, the invasion of the Sinai, began when an Israeli paratrooper battalion was airdropped into the Sinai Peninsula east of the Suez Canal near the Mitla Pass. In conjunction with the airdrop, 4 Israeli P-51 Mustangs using their wings and propellers cut all overhead telephone lines in the Sinai, severely disrupting Egyptian command and control. Due to a navigation error, the Israeli DC transports landed each 400 paratroopers 3 miles away from Parker's Memorial, their intended target. Eaton marched his men towards Jebel Heaton, where they dug in while receiving supplies of weapons dropped by French aircraft. Wait, what the fuck? Okay. At the same time, Colonel Sharon's 202nd Paratroop Brigade raced out towards the Mitla Pass. A major problem for Sharon was vehicle breakdown. Dayan's efforts to maintain strategic surprise bore fruit when the Egyptian commander, Field Marshal Abdel Hakim Amir, was at first treated the reports of an Israeli incursion into the Sinai as a large raid instead of an invasion, and as such, Amir did not order a general alert. By the time that Amir realized his mistake, the Israelis had made significant advances into the Sinai. It's pronounced Haitan? Okay. Early actions along the Gulf of Aqaba. The Battle of Bullshit. Air operations. I'm looking for more like if there's like significant like massacres or civilian deaths or Colonel Sharon is the same guy who became the PM of Israel. You watched him on the Vox video. Oh, okay. It's pronounced Aqaba. Aqaba. The Egyptian Navy dispatched Ibrahim El Awal, an ex-British Hunt-class destroyer, to Haifa with the aim of shelling that city's coastal oil installations. Wait. Was Haifa under Lebanon control at the time, or? I thought Haifa belonged to Israel at this point. Oh, I'm sorry, the Egyptian Navy. I'm reading British Navy. I don't know why I thought that. Never mind. Oh, because it says ex-British Hunt-class destroyer. My bad. Wow, hi. City's coastal oil installations. On the 31st of October, Ibrahim El Awal began bombarding the city. The French destroyer Crescent, which was guarding Haifa port as part of Operation Musketeer, returned fire but failed to score any hits. Ibrahim El Awal. When are you doing this on stream? A good one. Disengaged and turned northwest. The Israeli destroyers INS Elit and INS Yafo and two Israeli Air Force Dassault Oregons then gave chase and caught up with the Egyptian warship and attacked it, damaging the destroyer's turbo generator, rudder, and anti-aircraft guns. Left without power and able to steal, Ibrahim El Awal surrendered to the Israeli destroyers. During the engagement, the Ibrahim El Awal's crew lost two killed and 8 wounded. The Egyptian destroyer was subsequently incorporated into the Israeli Navy and renamed INS Haifa. Yikes. On the night of 31st of October in the Northern Red Sea, the British light cruiser, blah, 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 challenged and engaged the Egyptian frigate Damiet, reducing it to a burning hulk in a brief battle. Okay, do I need... The city of Rafah was strategically important to Israel because control of that city would sever the Gaza Strip from the Sinai and provide a way to the main centers of the northern Sinai, Al-Arish and Al-Qantara. Holding the forts outside of Rafah were a mixture of Egyptian and Palestinian forces in the 5th Infantry Brigade commanded by Brigadier General Jafar al-Abd. Rafah is this city right here, bordering Egypt and the Gaza Strip. In Rafah itself, the 87th Palestinian Infantry Brigade was assigned to capture Rafah, were 1st Infantry Brigade, led by Colonel Benjamin Givley, and the 27th Armor Brigade, commanded by Colonel Haim Barlev of the IDF. How far are you liking Israeli history so far? Or how are you liking it so far? You know, it's meh. To the south of Rafah were a series of mine-filled sand dunes, and to the north were a series of fortified hills. Dayan ordered the IDF forces to seize Crossroads 12 in the central Rafah area to focus on breaking through rather than reducing every Egyptian strongpoint. The IDF assault began with Israeli sappers and engineers. Sappers. Putting up a sapper. Okay, or dispenser? What did they say? Fuck, I feel like I heard about this. Were sappers in TF2? Am I making this up? Clearing a path at night, the minefields surrounded Rafah. French warships led by the cruiser Georges Legues provided fire support. Oh, sapper is the spy thing. Through Dayan, had a low opinion of the French gunnery. Though Dayan, I think this is a typo, had a low opinion of the French gunnery, complaining that the French only struck the Egyptian reserves. Modern Republic in 1999. I have to go. In case you want to know, Destiny, Ike forced the UK to end the crisis by threatening to destroy the value of the British pound, which was struggling at the time. Cool story, bro. Okay, I don't think I need to know all of this. You ever considered reacting to Caterino's funny compilations? No, I have not. Okay. Total casualties. British, 22 dead, 96 wounded. French, 10 dead, 33 wounded. Israel, 172 dead, 817 wounded. Egypt. What's that?
Cass and soju.
What?
Cass and soju.
Cass and soju?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Wait, I love you
Yeah.
and I appreciate you, but I don't think I can drink while I'm on this medication. I'm like really sensitive to alcohol. Well, I mean, it lasts for like 14 hours, I think. I took it, or it lasts for like 12 hours, but I took it at like 11. But alcohol, when I mix them, it fucks with my sleep super, super, super hard. But I appreciate it. I love you though. Melina might want some. The number of Egyptians killed was never really established. Egyptian casualties to the Israeli invasion were estimated at 1,000 to 3,000 dead and 4,000 wounded. 1,000 through... Drinking on stimulants is fun. It's fun to drink on stimulants, I agree, but it fucks with my sleep way too hard. Unless I've got somebody I'm like... trying to fuck. I don't give a fuck. Okay, 4,000 wounded. Okay. While losses to the Anglo-French operation were estimated at 650 dead and 900 wounded. 1,000 civilian Egyptians are estimated to have died. 1,000 Egyptian civilians estimated dead. Wait, Anglo-French operation were estimated at 650 dead and 900 wounded. I don't understand what this means. Is Anglo and French different than British and French? Or are they talking about like on the combined operation they lost 650 people? Oh, no. This is losses to, I understand. Casualties to the Israeli invasion and losses to the Anglo-French operation. Never mind, I understand. So we'll say the overall was like 1,500 dead, and then like probably like 4,900 wounded. Okay. End of hostilities. Anti-war protests in Britain. Although the public believed the British government's justifications of the invasion as a separation of Israeli and Egyptian forces, protests against the war occurred in Britain after it began. On the popular television talk show Free Speech, an especially bitter debate took place on the 31st of October with the leftist historian A.J.P. Taylor and the Labour journalist and future party leader Michael Foot calling their colleague on Free Speech, the Conservative MP Robert Boothby, a criminal for supporting the war. One television critic spoke of free speech during the war, that the team seemed to not only be on the verge of, but actually losing their tempers. Boothby boomed. Foot fumed and Taylor trephined with apparent real malice. The angry, passionate, much-watched debates about the Suez War on free speech mirrored the divided public response to the war. The British government pressured the BBC to support the war and seriously considered taking over the network. Eden's major mistake had been not to strike in July 1956, when there was widespread anger at Nasser's nationalization of the Suez Canal Company, as by the fall of 1956 public anger had subsided, with many people in Britain having come to accept the fait accompli. Many words in the English vocabulary are French origin. Why the fuck would you do this? Okay. And saw no reason for war. This was especially the case as Eden's claims that the Egyptians would hopelessly mismanage the canal had proven groundless, and that by September of 1956 it was clear that the change of management had not affected shipping. Even more importantly, Eden's obsession with secrecy and his desire to keep the preparations for war as secret as possible meant the Eden government did nothing in the months running up to the attack to explain to the British people why it was felt that war was necessary. Many of the reservists who were called up for their national service in the summer and fall of 1956 recalled feeling bewildered and confused as the Eden government started preparing to attack Egypt, while at the same time Eden insisted in public that he wanted a peaceful resolution of the dispute. and was opposed to attacking Egypt. The British author David Price Jones recalled that as a young officer, that the ultimatum was submitted to Egypt, and he had to explain to his troops why war with Egypt was necessary without believing a word that he was saying. Only one British soldier, however, refused to fight. H3 name dropped you when Pokey was there today. Are you sure this wasn't yesterday and you're not clipping some old shit? This was streamed 1 day ago. Good one. Did. Gateskill was much offended that Eden had kept him in the dark about the planning for action against Egypt and felt personally insulted that Eden had just assumed that he would support the war without consulting him first. Gateskill was the labor opposition leader, right? Leader of the Labor Party, yes. Okay. Destiny, rewatch. We already watched this. It's not even about me much. I don't think, right? Felt personally assaulted at Egypt. On 31st of October, he cited in Parliament the fact that despite Eden's claim that the British government had consulted closely with the Commonwealth, no other member nation did, and the Security Council, not even Australia, had supported the British action. He called the invasion an act of disastrous folly whose tragic consequences we shall regret for years. Yes, all of us will regret it because it will have done irreparable harm to the prestige and reputation of our country. We shall feel bound by every constitutional means at our disposal to oppose it. The stormy and violent debates in the House of Commons almost degenerated into fistfights after several Labour MPs compared Eden to Hitler. Yet the Prime Minister insisted, "We are not at war with Egypt now. There has not been a declaration of war by us. We are in an armed conflict." The British historian A.N. Wilson wrote that the letters to the Times caught the mood of the country with great majority opposing military intervention. The journalist Malcolm Muggeridge and the actor Robert Spikett wrote in the public. Okay, all right. The Suez Crisis played a key role in the reconciliation, blah, 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 blah. Do I care about any of this? 37% of the British people supported the war, while 44% were opposed. The Observer newspaper, in a leader editorial, attacked the Eden government for its folly and crookedness. Destiny, how are you going to do all this research on Israel and Palestine and then not debate Shapiro on it? I don't know. Maybe I will. Not sure. We'll see if it comes up or not. Rage Pope, what happened in 1888 to 1929 that would make him pro-Palestinian? At 1090, he just, like, everybody's going to be mad no matter where I start. Rage Pope is, like, super fucking, like, you know, half cock bent on starting in 1888. If I start in the 80s, people are going to say I need to read back further to find, like roots of Zionism or whatever. The reality is, I started where I started. I might go back earlier after I finish, like, getting to modern day, but, like, everybody's going to complain about starting at some fucking scenario. Rage Pope is just, like, autistically, like, bent on the 1888 as being... You could start from the beginning mind waves. When you say beginning mind waves, do you want me to start at the very beginning, like where there are no humans living there at all? Or do you want me to go back to the beginning where Jewish people were there before Arabs had ever set foot on the fucking land? Or what part mind waves do you want me to go back to the beginning for? Let me know. Fucking retard. Okay. Start with the Big Bang. True. I wanted to stand for the... Okay, do we care about this? No, we don't. Domestic support for Eden. Don't care about this that much. Tell me, like, how did this resolve? International reaction. Response by... It's probably decent to keep track of. The operation aimed at taking control of the Suez Canal. Hold on, I just want to ask one quick question, okay? Has Destiny been taking a slightly warmer approach to the Palestinian cause? I'm a Palestinian DGGer who stopped watching the last few weeks, felt disappointed. Chatter 33. Can you tell me what your ethnic tie is to Palestine? When you say you were a Palestinian, can you tell me what you mean by that? I'll wait for you to type it in chat. I'm just curious. Account was created 2 minutes ago, Destiny. Oh, okay. He's using Starlink in Gaza right now, so he's lagging a bit with the response based. Can we get 23andMe flares for chat so you can know the ethnic background of all chatters? Latina Titties, thank you for subbing so much, but I'm a booty guy, so let me know when your sister Latina Booty subscribes. I'm currently living in a refugee camp in Lebanon, where I was born. Okay, good for you. You're committed to the cause, my friend. Allah Akbar. I will say, though, being in Lebanon, it is quite interesting that your IP address resolves to New Jersey. It could be that Lebanon has camps out there? Or maybe you're on a VPN that connects through New Jersey instead of someplace in Europe. But... Huh. Okay. They've started the global jihad? True. Well. Destiny, that's a cable company. New Jersey is a cable company in Lebanon? Okay. Please click yarn. Why? Stop telling me. Lebanon, New Jersey. Shut up. Okay. The operation aimed to take control of the Suez Canal, Gaza, and parts of the Sinai was highly successful for the invaders from a military point of view, but was a disaster from a political point of view, resulting in international criticism and diplomatic pressure. Along with the Suez Crisis, the United States was also dealing with the near-simultaneous Hungarian Revolution. Vice President Richard Nixon later explained, We couldn't, on one hand, complain about the Soviets intervening in Hungary, and on the other hand, approve of the British and French picking that particular time to intervene against Nasser. Beyond that was Eisenhower's belief that if the United States were seen to acquiesce in the attack on Egypt, that the resulting backlash in the Arab world might win the Arabs over to the Soviet Union. Despite having no commercial or military interest in the area, many countries were concerned with the growing rift between Western allied nations. The Swedish ambassador at the court of St. James, Gunnar Hagloff, wrote in a letter to the anti-war conservative MP Edward Boyle, why do I care about what anybody in Sweden says ever? When Israel refused to withdraw its troops from the Gaza Strip and Sharm el-Sheikh, Eisenhower declared we must not allow Europe to go flat on its back for the want of oil. He sought UN-backed efforts to impose economic sanctions on Israel until it fully withdrew from Egyptian territory. Senate Majority Leader Lyndon B. Johnson and Minority Leader William Noland objected to American pressure on Israel. Johnson told the Secretary of State John Foster Dulles, oh, is Sweden influential at the time in terms of policy? Really? Fuck Sweden. That he wanted to oppose with all its skill any attempt to apply sanctions on Israel. Dulles rebuffed Johnson's request and informed Eisenhower of the objections made by the Senate. Eisenhower was insistent on applying economic sanctions to the extent of cutting off private American assistance to Israel, which was estimated to be over $100 million a year. Ultimately, the Democratic Party-controlled Senate would not cooperate with Eisenhower's position on Israel. Eisenhower finally told Congress that he would take the issue to the American people, saying America has either one voice or none, and that voice is the voice of the president, whether everybody agrees with him or not. Damn. The president spoke to the nation by radio and television, where he outlined Israel's refusal to withdraw, explaining his belief that the UN had no choice but to exert pressure upon Israel. Let's see. Eisenhower is very upset with Israel, Britain, France, because the U.S. could not reasonably oppose Soviet actions in Hungary while remaining silent on plans to seize territory from Egypt. Remain silent on European plans to seize territory from Egypt. The attack on Egypt greatly offended many in the Islamic world. In Pakistan, 300,000 people showed up in a rally in Lahore to show solidarity with Egypt, while in Karachi, a mob chanting anti-British slogans burned down the British High Commission. Are these cities in Pakistan? Second largest city in Pakistan. Oh, Jesus. I don't know these. These like quarters at all. Okay. Lahore. Okay, that's way the fuck over there. Gotcha. In Syria, the government blew up the Kirkuk-Banias pipeline that allowed Iraqi oil to reach tankers in the Mediterranean, to punish Iraq for supporting the invasion, and to cut Britain off from one of its main routes for taking delivery of Iraqi oil. King Saud of Saudi Arabia imposed a total oil embargo on Britain and France. Damn, these guys fucked up hard. 300,000 protesters in Pakistan chanting anti-British slogans. Protests in Syria. Oh, actually, not even protests. That was the government. Syrian government blew up the Kirkuk-Banias pipeline to punish Iraq and Britain. Saudi Arabia imposed a total oil embargo on Britain and France. The only pack I stan is my own. Based. Wait, hold on. Give me 1 sec. Hold on. Ooh. I'm on my knees asking for this unban. Mashallah, I got accidentally permit on the 18th and I still haven't been unbanned after submitting the form. I need to return to the front lines. I'm coming for you, Forethought. I'm coming to your house. What did you get banned for? Forethought, where are you? Put me out of my misery. Why are you... Okay, you're unbanned, I guess. Shit. RTB is gonna get mad at me for that. On the 30th of October, the Security Council held a meeting at the... When they say, if you're ever referring to the Security Council in capital letters like this, you're always referring to the UN Security Council, right? There wasn't like a US Security Council or some other security, right? That's... On October 30th, the Security Council held a meeting at the request of the United States when it submitted a draft. At this point, was the USSR part of the like UN Security Council, or... Yes. I don't know where I would find... At the UN's founding in 1945, the five permanent members of the Security Council were the Republic of China, the Provisional Government of the French Republic, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Gotcha. Oh, UN General Assembly Resolution 997. The Security Council submitted a draft. Oh, the U.S. submitted a draft resolution calling upon Israel immediately to withdraw its armed forces behind the established armistice lines. It was not adopted because of the British and French vetoes. A similar draft resolution sponsored by the Soviet Union was also rejected. On the 31st of October, also as planned, France and the UK launched an air attack against targets in Egypt, which was followed shortly by a landing of the troops at the northern end of the Canal Zone later that day. Considering the grave situation created by the actions against Egypt and with lack of unanimity, Jesus, among the permanent members, preventing it from exercising its primary responsibility to maintain international peace and security, the Security Council passed Resolution 119, decided to call an emergency special session of the General Assembly for the first time, as provided in the 1950 Uniting for Peace resolution, in order to make appropriate recommendations to end the fighting. The emergency special session was convened on the 1st of November, the same day Nasser requested diplomatic assistance from the U.S. without requesting the same from the Soviet Union. Why did he ask us instead of the Soviet Union when he was buying weapons from them and sucking their dick? The fuck? He was at first skeptical of the efficacy of U.S. diplomatic efforts at the UN, but later gave full credit to Eisenhower's role in stopping the war. In the early hours of the 2nd of November, the General Assembly adopted the United States proposal for Resolution 997. The vote was 64 in favor and 5 opposed. Australia, New Zealand, Britain, France, and Israel. Losers. With 6 abstentions. It called for an immediate ceasefire. The U.S. calls for Security Council and UN meetings/resolutions. Resolution 997. Call for an immediate ceasefire and withdrawal of all forces behind the armistice lines, an arms embargo, and the reopening of the Suez Canal, which was currently blocked. Passes with a vote of 64-5. Way off topic, but did you see the Cone Carnage game? No, I'm still waiting for I'm still waiting for Reynad's game. Wait, where is Reynad's game? Is there like any progress, or what was it called again? The Bazaar? Our first look at gameplay in the Bazaar.
It's Reynad back for another update video of the Bazaar.
2 years ago. It's coming. Look, last update, 10 months ago.
What's up, guys, and welcome to another update
Man, that hair has grown a lot.
video for the Bazaar.
How much money did they raise altogether for this game?
We're going to take the time to make the game the best that it can be. Let's close this out with a little Q&A. How will you handle the Indiegogo pre-orders and Tempo Republic backers?
Indiegogo, the Bazaar, Reynad. Oh, there wasn't that much money raised. $115,000? Or I mean, like, I guess, like, I thought it could have been, listen, bro. Isn't Star Citizen almost at, is Star Citizen almost at $1 billion raised? $600 million? The Secretary General was requested to observe and report promptly on compliance to both the Security Council and General Assembly for further action as deemed appropriate in accordance with the UN Charter. Over the next several days, the Emergency Special Session consequently adopted a series of enabling resolutions which established the first United Nations Emergency Force. Jibsbox, $5. How's working out going? It's going great. I'm twink maxing right now. By not eating ever. On the 7th of November, by Resolution 1001, this proposal of the emergency force and the resulting ceasefire was made possible primarily through the efforts of Lester B. Pearson, the Secretary of External Affairs of Canada, and Dag Hammarskjöld, the Secretary General of the United Nations. Christ. Britain and France agreed to withdraw from Egypt within a week. Israel did not. Destiny, real quick, which proposal do you think the Palestinians should have accepted? Was it the Balfour Declaration? No, it was, I think it was the UN provision from 1947. I don't remember what the name of it was, but it was the, it was the 1947 one. The role of Nehru, both as Indian Prime Minister and leader of the non-aligned movement, was significant. The Indian historian Inder Malhotra wrote that now Nehru, who had tried to be even-handed between the two sides, denounced Eden, the partition plan, denounced Eden and co-sponsors of the aggression vigorously. He had a powerful, if relatively silent ally in the U.S. President Dwight Eisenhower, who went to the extent of using America's clout in the IMF to make Eden and Molay behave. The Indian historian Inder Malhotra wrote about Nehru's role that, so the Suez War ended in Britain's humiliation, Eden lost his job, Nehru achieved his objective of protecting Egypt's sovereignty and Nasser's honor. Disapproval of UN resolution in West Germany. A rare example of support for the Anglo-French actions against Egypt came from West Germany. Though his cabinet was divided, West Germany's Chancellor Konrad Adenauer was furious with the United States for its chumminess with the Russians, as Adenauer called the U.S. refusal to intervene in Hungary and voting with the Soviet Union at the UN Security Council. Adenauer told his cabinet on the 7th of November that Nasser was a pro-Soviet force that needed to cut down to size. that needed to cut down to size, and in his view, the attack on Egypt was completely justified. What appalled Adnir about the crisis was the United States had come against the attack on Egypt and voted with the Soviet Union at Security Council against Britain and France, which led Adnir to fear that the US and Soviet Union would carve up the world according to their own interests with no thought for the interests of the European states. Sam Hyde emote needs to live on, otherwise I'll make sure to edit some of the Wikipedia pages to get you to misspeak. Okay. Adnir was especially worried by the fact that the American embassy in Bonn would not provide a clear answer as to what the American policy in response to the Bulganan letter. What the fuck is Bonn? Are these real cities? Is a federal city in the German state of North Rhine-Westphalia. Okay, that exists. Adnir maintained that his cabinet that the French had every right to invade Egypt because of Nasser's support for the FLN in Algeria, but the British were partly to blame because they inexplicably shut down their Suez Canal base in 1954. It was the capital of West Germany. Lame. Subsequently, the traditionally Francophile Adenauer drew closer to Paris. On the 5th and 6th of November, he refused to cancel a planned visit to Paris and his summit with Mollet was clearly meant to be seen as a gesture of moral support. Comments regarding opening the ceremony. Okay, well, international reactions. So we can have this here. West Germany was furious with the US and supported France and Britain. It's Adnor. Adnor? Why would Palestine accept 1947 if it allocated 56% of land to Jews, even though Palestinians had twice the population? Because at that point, Palestinians had zero land. And having an official border drawn on a map that like international communities, including the UN, would recognize, would probably be pretty nice. The Palestinian people gambled. They thought that if they agreed to nothing, they could kick all the Jewish people out. And clearly that gamble fucking failed. So, I mean, what do you want to say? What do you want me to say? It's ah spoken like shout, ow. Oh, Adnor? Or Adnar? Adnar? Rage Pope. Technically, they had 100% of the land until Britain took it away from them. Oh, Rage Pope. What was the name of their country again? Sorry, I missed that. I missed it on my studying, Rage Pope. Can you tell me what it was? It's Adenar. Destiny. Greater Syria. Okay, that's what I thought. Was it the actual Palestinians who refused, or just the Arab nations leading their cause? I think it was the entire Arab League refused. Yeah. Israeli response to the crisis' aftermath. Okay, let's see. On the 7th of November, David Ben-Gurion addressed the Knesset and declared a great victory, saying that the 1949 armistice agreement with Egypt was dead and buried, and that the armistice lines were no longer valid and could not be restored. Under no circumstances would Israel agree to the stationing of UN forces on its territory or in any area it occupied. He also made an oblique reference to his intention to annex the Sinai Peninsula. Isaac Alteris writes that Ben-Gurion was carried away by the resounding victory against Egypt, and while a statesman well known for his sober realism, he took flight in dreams of grandeur. The speech marked the beginning of a 4-month-long diplomatic struggle, culminating in withdrawal from all territory under conditions far less palatable than those envisioned in the speech, but with conditions for sea access to Eilat and a UNEF presence on Egyptian soil. The speech immediately drew increased international pressure on Israel to withdraw. That day in New York, the emergency session passed Resolution 1002, or 1002, or 1002, again calling for the immediate withdrawal of Israeli troops to behind the armistice lines and for the immediate withdrawal of British and French troops from Egyptian territory. After a long Israeli cabinet meeting late on the 8th of November, Ben-Gurion informed Eisenhower that Israel declared its willingness to accept withdrawal of Israeli forces from Sinai when satisfactory arrangements are made with the international force that is about to enter the Canal Zone. Israel originally wanted to maintain indefinite, control over the Sinai but was eventually forced out due to international pressure led heavily by Eisenhower, I guess we're saying. Eisenhower. Soviet saber rattling. Although the Soviet Union's position of the crisis was as helpless as was the United States regarding Hungary's uprising, Premier Nikolai Bulganin threatened to intervene on the Egyptian side and to launch rocket attacks at Britain, France, and Israel. Bulganin accused Ben-Gurion of supporting European colonialism and Mollet of hypocrisy for leading a socialist government while pursuing a right-wing foreign policy. He did, however, concede in his letter to Eden that Britain had legitimate interests in Egypt. The Soviet threat to send troops to Egypt to fight the Allies led Eisenhower to fear that this might be the beginning of World War III. One of Eisenhower's aides, Emmett Hughes, recalled the reaction at the White House to the Bulganin letters was somber, as there was fear that this was the beginning to the countdown to World War III. A war that if it occurred, would kill hundreds of millions of people. In private, Eisenhower told Undersecretary of State Herbert Hoover Jr. of his fears that the Soviet Union might be ready to undertake any wild adventure. They are as scared and furious as Hitler was in his last days. There's nothing more dangerous than a dictatorship in that frame of mind. If the Soviet Union did not go to war with NATO allies, Britain and France, then the United States would be unable to remain, or did go to war with NATO allies, Britain and France, then the U.S. would not be able to remain neutral, because the United States' obligations under NATO would come into effect, requiring them to go to war with the Soviet Union in defense of Britain and France. Likewise, if the Soviet Union attacked Israel, though there was no formal American commitment to defend Israel, the Eisenhower administration would come under heavy domestic pressure to intervene. From Eisenhower's viewpoint, it was better to end the war against Egypt rather than run the risk of this escalating into the Third World War, in case Khrushchev was serious about going to war in defense of Egypt, as he insisted was as serious as he insisted he was. Wait, Khrushchev is cited here. Oh. What is the difference between the premier and the... So what, is Khrushchev the president and Nikolai Bulganin was the premier? What the fuck is the difference between these positions in... Oh, they just called them leader. Premier is prime minister. First secretary of the Communist Party from 53 to 64. Is premier just leader of a party? It's the premier of the Soviet Union from 55 to 58. Premier isn't the guy in charge. Khrushchev was... Yeah, I'm pretty sure Khrushchev was the big boy leader. I'm just not sure what the... I don't know what the premier's job is. Premier of the Soviet Union was the head of government of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. 12 individuals held the post. Oh, wait. The fuck? Okay, first secretary. The general secretary of the Communist Party was the leader of the Communist Party of the Socialist of the the Soviet Union. I'm so confused. What's the difference between first secretary of the Communist Party and premier? The head of the party was more powerful than the head of government. Okay. Okay. Eisenhower's reaction to these threats from the Soviet Union was, if those fellows start something, we may have to hit them, and if necessary, with everything in the bucket. Eisenhower immediately ordered Lockheed U-2 flights over Syria and Israel to search for any Soviet air forces on Syrian bases so the British and French could destroy them. He told Hoover and CIA Director Alan Dulles, if the Soviets attacked the French and British directly, we would be in a war and we would be justified in taking military action even if Congress were not in session. The Americans excluded Israel from the guarantee against Soviet attack, however, alarming the Israeli government. The U-2 showed that Soviet aircraft were not in Syria despite the threats. Khrushchev often claimed to possess a vast arsenal of nuclear-tipped ICBMs, and while disclaiming any intention of starting a war, maintained that he would be more than happy to turn a conventional war into a nuclear one if war did come. U-2 flights over the Soviet Union, which were intended to discover if the country really did have the nuclear arsenal that it claimed to have, only started in 1956, and it was not until February 1959 that it firmly established that Khrushchev had vastly exaggerated his nuclear strength. Loser. In fact, the supposedly huge Soviet arsenal of ICBMs with which Khrushchev would wipe out the cities of Britain, France, Israel, and if necessary, the United States, consisted only of 4 Semyorka missiles stationed at a swamp south of Arkhangelsk. From the viewpoint of Eisenhower in 1956, he had no way of knowing for certain whether Khrushchev's nuclear braggadocio was for real or not. Earlier in 1956, Dulles had warned Eisenhower that Khrushchev was the most dangerous person to lead the Soviet Union since the October Revolution, as Khrushchev was not a coldly calculating person, but rather one who reacted emotionally. He was obviously intoxicated much of the time and could be expected to commit irrational acts. Bro, how many of these leaders and politicians shit are like on drugs or fucking what the fuck? Khrushchev later admitted in his memoirs that he was not seriously thinking of going to war in November of 1956, as he claimed at the time, as he lacked the necessary ICBMs to make good his threats. Financial pressures. The U.S. put financial pressure on the UK to end the invasion because the Bank of England had lost $45 million between the 30th of October and the 2nd of November, and Britain's oil supply had been restricted by the closing of the Suez Canal. The British sought immediate assistance from the IMF, but it was denied by the United States. Eisenhower, in fact, ordered his Secretary of Treasury, George M. Humphrey, to prepare to sell part of the U.S. government's sterling bond holdings. The UK government considered invading Kuwait and Qatar if oil sanctions were put in place by the U.S. Britain's Chancellor of the Exchequer, your treasury person, Harold Macmillan advised his Prime Minister, Anthony Eden, that the U.S. was fully prepared to carry out this threat. He also warned his prime minister that Britain's foreign exchange reserves simply could not sustain the devaluation of the pound that would come after the US's actions, and within weeks of such a move, the country would be unable to import the food and energy supplies needed to sustain the population on the islands. However, there were suspicions in the cabinet that Macmillan had deliberately overstated the financial situation in order to force Eden out. What Treasury officials had told Macmillan was far less serious than what he had told the cabinet. In concert with U.S. action, Saudi Arabia started an oil embargo against Britain and France. The U.S. refused to fill the gap until Britain and France agreed to a rapid withdrawal. Other NATO members refused to sell oil they received from Arab nations to Britain or France. Nice. Good work, U.S. Ceasefire on the 6th of November. November 6th. Dexel, I see the USSR began a boycott of the UN and didn't use their veto for some time. Gotcha. Okay. November 6th. It's 1956, I imagine, right? British announced a ceasefire. Warning neither France nor Israel beforehand. Troops were still in Port Said and on operational maneuvers when the order came from London. Port Said had been overrun, and the military assessment was that the Suez Canal could have been completely taken within 24 hours. Eisenhower initially agreed to meet with Eden and Mole to resolve the differences, but then canceled the proposed meeting after Secretary of State Dulles advised him it risked inflaming the Middle Eastern situation further. Eisenhower was not in favor of an immediate withdrawal of British, French, and Israeli troops until the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Henry Cabot Lodge, Jr. pushed for it. Until the U.S. ambassador was not in favor of immediate withdrawal. Okay. Eden's predecessor, Sir Winston Churchill, commented on the 22nd of November, "I cannot understand why our troops were halted. To go so far and not go on was madness." Churchill further added that while he might not have dared to begin the military operation, nevertheless, once having ordered it, he would certainly not have dared to stop it before it had achieved its objective. Without further guarantee, the Anglo-French task force had to finish withdrawing by the 22nd of December 1956 to be replaced by Danish and Colombian units of the UNEF. The Israelis refused to host any UN force on Israeli-controlled territory and withdrew from the Sinai and Gaza in March of 1957. Before the withdrawal of Israeli forces systematically destroyed infrastructure in the Sinai Peninsula, such as roads, railways, and telephone lines, and all houses in the villages of Abu Agila and El Qasima. Before the railways were destroyed, Israeli troops confiscated Egyptian National Railways equipment, including 6 locomotives and a 30-ton breakdown crane for use by Israel Railways. The UNEF was formed by forces from countries that were not part of the major alliances, NATO and the Warsaw Pact, though Canadian Armed Forces troops participated in later years, since Canada had spearheaded the idea of a neutral force. By the 24th of April 1957, the canal was fully reopened to shipping. Anglo-French task force was fully withdrawn by the 22nd of, by December 22nd, 1956. Israeli forces were fully withdrawn from the Sinai and Gaza in March of 1957 after destroying and sealing Egyptian infrastructure and villages on the way out. Aftermath. Egyptian sovereignty and ownership of the canal had been confirmed by the United States and the United Nations. In retirement, Anthony Eden, the British Prime Minister at the time, maintained that the military response had prevented a much larger war in the Middle East. In the context of the massive armament of Egypt via Czechoslovakia, Israel had been expecting an Egyptian invasion in either March or April of 1957, as well as a Soviet invasion of Syria. The crisis may also have hastened decolonization, as many of the remaining British and French colonies gained independence over the next few years. Some argued that the imposed ending of the crisis led to over-hasty decolonization in Africa, increasing the chance of civil wars and military dictatorships in newly independent countries. The fight over the canal also laid the groundwork for the Six-Day War. In 1967 due to the lack of a peace settlement following the 56 War and rising tensions between Egypt and Israel. Additionally, the Soviet Union was able to avoid most repercussions from its concurrent violent suppression of the rebellion in Hungary, and were able to present an image at the UN as a defender of small powers against imperialism. Cute. As a direct result of the crisis, and in order to prevent further Soviet expansion in the region, Eisenhower asked the Congress on January of 1957 for authorization to use military force if requested by any Middle Eastern nation to check aggression. And secondly, to set aside $200 million to help Middle Eastern countries that desired aid from the United States. Congress granted both requests, and this policy became known as the Eisenhower Doctrine. Eisenhower seems like kind of a base dude. He seems like a cool guy. $200 million to help Middle Eastern countries that desired aid from the U.S. The Soviet Union made major gains with regards to influence in the Middle East, as American historian John Lewis Gaddis wrote, when the British-French-Israeli invasion forced them to choose, Eisenhower and Dulles came down with instant decisiveness on the side of the Egyptians. They preferred alignment with Arab nationalism, even if it meant alienating pro-Israeli constituencies on the eve constituencies on the eve of a presidential election in the United States, even if it meant throwing the NATO alliance into its most divisive crisis yet, even if it meant risking whatever was left of the Anglo-American special relationship, even if it meant voting with the Soviet Union in the United Nations Security Council at a time when the Russians themselves were invading Hungary and crushing, far more brutally than anything that happened in Egypt, a rebellion against their own authority there. The fact that the Eisenhower administration itself applied crushing economic pressure to the British and French to disengage from Suez, and that it subsequently forced an Israeli pullback from the Sinai as well, all of this, one might thought, would won the United States the lasting gratitude of Nasser, the Egyptians, and the Arab world. Instead, the Americans lost influence in the Middle East as a result of Suez, while the Russians gained it. Wait, why didn't Egypt like us more after this? Khrushchev's much publicized threat, expressed through letters written by Nikolai Bulganin, began to begin rocket attacks on the 5th of November on Britain, France, and Israel if they did not withdraw from Egypt, was widely believed at the time to have forced a ceasefire. Accordingly, it enhanced the prestige of the Soviet Union in Egypt. Accordingly, it enhanced the prestige of the Soviet Union in Egypt, the Arab world, and the Third World, who believed the USSR was prepared to launch a nuclear attack on Britain, France, and Israel for the sake of Egypt. Though Nasser in private admitted that it was American economic pressure that had saved him, it was Khrushchev, not Eisenhower, whom Nasser publicly thanked as Egypt's savior and special friend. They were also selling them a fuck ton of weapons too, so the relationship was probably good there as well. Callow, thanks for the $10. Our use of international influence to halt England, France, and Israel's aggression against Egypt in 1956 was a historic turning point. Previously, they had apparently thought that we were bluffing when we openly said that the Soviet Union possessed powerful rockets, but then they saw that we really had rockets and it had this effect. The Soviet Union was given all the credit due to nuclear saber rattling from Nasser, though it was almost assuredly U.S. Diplomatic and financial pressure that brought the conflict to a swift end. The conclusion that Khrushchev drew from the Suez Crisis, which he saw as his own personal triumph, was that the use of nuclear blackmail was a very effective tool for achieving Soviet foreign policy goals. Therefore, a long period of crises began, starting with the Berlin crisis, beginning later in 1958 and culminating in the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. U.S. Secretary of State John Foster Dulles perceived a power vacuum in the Middle East, and he thought the U.S. should fill it. His policies, which ultimately led to the Eisenhower Doctrine, were based on the assumption that Nasser and other Arab leaders shared America's fear of the Soviet Union, which was emphatically not the case. In fact, Nasser never wanted Egypt to be aligned with one single superpower, and instead preferred the Americans and Soviets vying for his friendship. Which that was true at the start of this conflict, at the start of Nasser assuming power, right? Nasser saw the Eisenhower Doctrine as a the Eisenhower Doctrine was basically the U.S. saying that it would give money and support to any Arab nation in the Middle East that wanted it, right? $200 million or something. Middle Eastern country could request American economic assistance or aid from U.S. military force if it was being threatened by armed aggression. Eisenhower singled out the Soviet threat in his doctrine by authorizing the commitment of U.S. forces to secure and protect the territorial integrity and political independence of such nations, requesting such aid against overt armed aggression from any nation controlled by international communism. The phrase international communism made the doctrine much broader than simply responding to Soviet military action. A danger that could be linked to communists of any nation could conceivably invoke the doctrine. Gotcha. Destiny, but didn't you read just now that the U.S. decided to interfere only in response to USSR saber rattling, and he wanted to abstain before? No. It looked like Eisenhower, like that was maybe a contributing factor, that we were worried that the USSR is being crazy, but it seemed like the entire time Eisenhower was basically telling Britain and France to fuck off, that there wasn't a good reason to intervene here. Months had passed since Egypt was controlling the Suez Canal, and there was still shipments going through, and that, I don't think Eisenhower at any point supported this. That doesn't seem to be the case. Okay, what are we looking for? Literally says the U.S. told Britain that they must exhaust every peaceful approach possible. Yeah. What was I looking for? And that's the thing. I don't know. And led him to ally Egypt with the Soviet Union as an effective counterweight. It was only with the quiet abandonment of the Eisenhower Doctrine and a National Security Council review in mid-1958 that Nasser started pulling away from the Soviet Union to resume his preferred role as an opportunist who tried to use both superpowers to his advantage, playing on their animosity. The American historian Arthur L. Herman says that the episode ruined the usefulness of the United Nations to support American ideals. Suez destroyed the United Nations. Hey, thank you. What's in the dumplings?
Pork, beef.
Pork and beef.
Pork, beef.
Crazy. Thank you. Wait, did you stream this?
No.
What the fuck? Do you take pictures of it?
Yeah.
Oh. Thanks.
Nelly, you hungry? Yeah.
Suez destroyed the United Nations as well by handing it over to Dag Hammarskjöld and his feckless ilk. Eisenhower turned the organization from the stout voice of international law and order into, at best, a meaningless charade, at worst, a Machiavellian cesspool. Instead of teaching Nasser and his fellow dictators that breaking international law does not pay, Suez taught them that every transgression will be forgotten and forgiven, especially if oil is at stake. Suez destroyed the moral authority of the so-called world community. 50 years later, we're still living in the rubble. Wait, so what did Nasser actually do that was breaking international law? Oh, it was when he nationalized the Suez Canal. That was in contravention to the 1888... what was it called? Control F. 1888. Oh, hey, Lex. Thanks, buddy. The contravention of the Constantinople Convention of 1888, and it probably violated the armistice agreements as well. And he also cut off access to Israel. That's true as well. That's right. Okay. Thanks for the $20, Lex. I love you, buddy. Military thought. What is today? Oh, it's Saturday. The great military lesson that was reinforced by the Suez War was the extent that the desert favored highly fluid mobile operations, the power of aerial interdiction. French aircraft destroyed Egyptian forces threatening paratroopers at Roswa, and Israeli air power saved the IDF several days' worth of time. To operate in the open desert without air supremacy proved to be suicidal for the Egyptian forces in the Sinai. Big East, thanks for the $10. Lex wants more league. Okay. The Royal Marine helicopter assault at Port Said showed promise as a technique for transporting troops at a small landing zone. Strategic bombing proved ineffective. Revised Phase 2 failed to achieve its aim of breaking Egyptian morale, while at the same time, those civilian deaths that did occur helped to turn world opinion against the invasion and especially hurt support for the war in Britain. In West Germany, the Chancellor was shocked by the Soviet threat of nuclear strikes against Britain and France, and even more by the quiescent American response to the Soviet threat of nuclear annihilation against two of NATO's key members. Egypt, while the prompt withdrawal of UK and French troops later followed by Israeli troop withdrawal, Egypt kept control of the Suez Canal. After the fighting ended, the Egyptian Chief of Staff Abdel Hakim Amir accused Nasser of provoking an unnecessary war and then blaming the military for the result. The British historian D.R. Thorpe wrote that the outcome gave Nasser an inflated view of his own power, despite thinking it overcome the combined forces of the United Kingdom, France, and Israel, failing to attribute their withdrawal to pressure from the superpowers. Despite the Egyptian defeat, Nasser emerged a hero in the Arab world. American historian Derek Varble commented, although Egyptian forces fought with mediocre skill during the conflict, many Arabs saw Nasser as the conqueror of European colonialism and Zionism simply because Britain, France, and Israel left the Sinai and the Northern Canal Zone. The Greek-American historian P.J. Vatikiotis, described Nasser's speeches in 1956 and after as providing superficial explanations of Egypt's military collapse in Sinai, based on some extraordinary strategy, and that simplistic children's tales about the Egyptian Air Force's prowess in 56 were linked in the myth of orderly withdrawal from Sinai. All this was necessary to construct yet another myth, that of Port Said, inflating and magnifying odd and sporadic resistance into a Stalingrad-like tenacious defense. Port Said became the spirit of Egyptian independence and dignity. During the Nasser era, the fighting at Port Said became a symbol of Egyptian victory, linked to a global anti-colonial struggle. Of Nasser's post-Suez hubris, Thorpe wrote, "The Six-Day War against Israel in 67 was when reality kicked in, a war that would never have taken place if the Suez crisis had had a different resolution." Of Tawfiq al-Hakim's writings about the 56 and 67 wars, Vatikiotis summarizes, "Were bluffing and histrionics in the nature of Nasser? It was bluffing that led to the crushing of Egypt in 67 because of the mass self-deception exercised by leaders and followers alike ever since the non-existent Stalingrad, which was Port Said in 1956. Huh. Okay. Let's see. Abolishing civil liberties. In October of 56, when the Suez crisis erupted, Nasser brought in a set of sweeping regulations abolishing civil liberties and allowing the state to stage mass arrests without charge and strip away Egyptian citizenship from any group it desired. These measures were mostly directed against the Jews of Egypt. As part of its new policy, 1,000 Jews were arrested and 500 Jewish businesses were seized by the government. A statement branding the Jews as Zionists and enemies of the state was read out in the mosques of Cairo and Alexandria. Jewish bank accounts were confiscated, cha-ching, and many Jews lost their jobs. Lawyers, engineers, doctors, and teachers were not allowed to work in their professions. Thousands of Jews were ordered to leave the country. They were allowed to take only one suitcase and a small sum of cash and forced to sign declarations donating their property to the Egyptian government. Some 25,000 Jews, almost half the Jewish community, dipped mainly for Israel, Europe, the United States, and South America. By 57, the Jewish population of Egypt had fallen to 15,000. Bro, my organization here is literally non-existent. Let's see. Jews had their civil liberties infringed upon in Egypt following the war, resulting in some 25,000 almost half of the Jewish population leaving Egypt. Wasn't Hassan trying to say that Jews were treated wonderfully in Muslim countries? Yeah, so did Karantos. I think by wonderfully, they just mean like not holocausted. It's like, is there... Oh. Political and psychological impact of the crisis had a fundamental impact on British politics. Anthony Eden was accused of misleading. I think we're almost done, okay? Misleading Parliament and resigned from office on the 9th of January 1557. Eden had been Prime Minister for less than 2 years when he resigned, and his unsuccessful handling of the Suez Crisis eclipsed the successes he had achieved in the previous 30 years as Foreign Secretary in 3 conservative governments. Eden's successor, Harold Macmillan, accelerated the process of decolonization and sought to restore Britain's special relationship with the U.S. He enjoyed a close friendship with Eisenhower, dating from the North African Campaign in World War II, where General Eisenhower commanded Allied invasion forces, and Macmillan provided political liaison with Winston Churchill. British foreign policy thinking turned away from acting as a great imperial power. During the 60s, there was much speculation that Prime Minister Harold Winston's continued refusal to send British troops to the Vietnam War, even as a token force, despite President Lyndon B. Johnson's persistent request, was partially due to Americans failing to support Britain during the Suez Crisis. Wow. Edward Heath was dismayed by the U.S. opposition to Britain during the Suez Crisis. As Prime Minister in October of 1973, he refused the U.S. permission to use any of the UK's air bases to resupply during the Yom Kippur War. Is it Kippur or Kipper? Kippur War, or to allow Americans to gather intelligence on British bases in Cyprus. Ass mad. The war led to the eviction of GCHQ, Governmental Communications Headquarters, from several of its best foreign signals intelligence collection sites, including the new Perker, Ceylon site, fake countries. Recent developed at a cost of 2 million euros. Blah, blah, blah. Let's see. And then in France... Rissé Capin argues that Franco-American ties never recovered from the Suez Crisis. There are various reasons for this. Previously, there had already been strains in the Franco-American relationship triggered by what Paris considered U.S. betrayal of the French war effort in Indochina at Dien Bien Phu in 1954. Don't know anything about that. The incident demonstrated the weakness of the NATO alliance and its lack of planning and cooperation beyond the European stage. Mollet believed Eden should have delayed calling the cabinet together until the 7th of November, taking the whole canal in the meantime, and then veto with the French any UN resolutions on sanctions. From the point of view of General Charles de Gaulle, the Suez events demonstrated to France that it could not rely on its allies. The British had initiated a ceasefire in the midst of the battle without consulting the French. That was wild. While the Americans had opposed Paris politically. The damage to the ties between Paris and Washington, D.C. culminated in President de Gaulle's 1966 decision to withdraw from the military integration of NATO, ASMAD. The Suez War had an immense impact on French domestic politics. Much of the French Army officer corps felt that they had been betrayed by what they considered to be the spineless politicians in Paris when they were on the verge of victory, just as they believed they'd been betrayed in Vietnam in 1954, and accordingly become more determined to win the war in Algeria, even if it meant overthrowing the Fourth Republic to do so. The Suez Crisis thus helped to set the stage for the military disillusionment with the Fourth Republic, which was to lead to the collapse of the Republic in 1958. According to the protocol of the Sèvres Agreements, France secretly transmitted parts of its own atomic technology to Israel, including a detonator. And then the Sèvres Agreement, that was the top secret sneaky plan where the UK and the French agreed that Israel would invade Egypt like the bad guys, and then Britain and France would go in and they'd be like, guys, stop fighting, but we're also going to take control of the canal and just chill here. Right, this is, okay. And then they also shared some atomic technology with Israel. Cute, okay. So it was agreed, yeah, okay. And then for Israel, look, we're almost done. Last few paragraphs, guys. Do you think the UN is anti-Semitic like some Zionists are claiming at the moment? I don't think so. The only thing I would caution is that it feels like, when I look at how people speak publicly and act publicly, it feels like anti-Zionism can very quickly bleed into anti-Semitism. So watch for that, okay? Let's see. Okay, don't care about this. Yeah, also Zionism means different things depending on who you ask as well, so yeah, I don't know. The IDF gained confidence from the campaign, according to whom? The war demonstrated that Israel was capable of executing large-scale military maneuvers in addition to small nighttime raids and counterinsurgency operations. Ben-Gurion, reading on the 6th of November that 90,000 British and French troops had been involved in the Suez Affair, wrote in his diary, if they had only appointed a commander of ours over this force, Nasser would have been destroyed in 2 days. The war also had tangible benefits for Israel. The Straits of Tiran, closed by Egypt since 1950, was reopened. Israeli shipping could henceforth move freely through the Straits of Tiran. Wait, they closed this in 1950? Jesus. I don't know why, Le Ruse, you say that. Wait, what? Henceforth, move freely through Switzerland to Africa and Asia. The Israelis also secured the presence of UN peacekeepers in Sinai. Operation Kadesh brought Israel an 11-year lull on its southern border with Egypt. Israel escaped the political humiliation that befell Britain and France following their swift, forced withdrawal. In addition, Destiny, that's not... Oh, that's Trollface. Okay. Israel escaped the political humiliation that befell Britain and France following their swift forced withdrawal. In addition, its stubborn refusal to withdraw without guarantees, even in defiance of the United States and United Nations, ended all Western efforts, mainly American and British ones, to impose a political settlement in the Middle East without taking Israel's security needs into consideration. In 1965, Eisenhower told Jewish fundraiser and Republican Party supporter Max M. Fisher that he greatly regretted forcing Israel to withdraw from the Sinai Peninsula. Vice President Nixon recalled that Eisenhower expressed the same view to him on several occasions. Okay. Christ. Okay, let's see if we can summarize this. What would be this started in 1956? Okay. In 1956, Egyptian leader Nasser, driven by his desire to be neither a puppet to the US nor USSR, nationalized the Suez Canal while acquiring large amounts of weapons from the USSR. In defiance of prior agreements, we'll say. Britain, France, and Israel devised a covert plan. I should have the agreements. I should know these offhand. of the Constantinople Convention of 1888. Of prior agreements, namely the Constantinople Convention. Okay, Britain, France, and Israel devised a covert plan the Protocol of Severus in order to stage an Israeli military invasion that would be disrupted by Anglo-Franco forces. Is that a real term? Can I use that? Which would then give way to an international running of, administration of, an international co-ownership? I don't know, international ownership of the Suez Canal. Despite military success by all three parties, intense international pressure, especially from the United States, pressure from revolting colonies, and intense domestic pressure at home, combined with nuclear saber rattling from the USSR, forced the Anglo-Franco forces to immediately withdraw, suffering an international humiliation. Israel would withdraw its forces sometime later, having re-established trade through the Straits of Tiran. Egypt, and namely Nasser, would emerge feeling as though they had single-handedly defied European imperialistic aims, saw himself as an emerging leader, as an emerging unaligned leader of the Arab world. It was like an okay summary. Intense international United States, picture of worried that trade would be interrupted, Britain and France approached Israel was worried that the anti-Zionist Egypt was amassing a massive military to devise a covert. Okay, that's all right. I think it has like the important. I think. Okay, I'll throw this up as like a summary. I think it's fine. Israel has been condemned 68 times. Every other country on earth combined has been condemned 67 times. Together, doesn't that seem a little sussy? Hey, listen, maybe Israel's especially bad, my dude. Okay. Here, boom. We'll just make this green. No, why is it fucking up my formatting? Oh, fuck. I know what it is. It's because it's interfering with the auto list making. Boom, okay. Okay. That gets us through the Suez Crisis, or the Second Arab-Palestinian War, I think, or the Second Arab-Israeli War. From 63 to 69, Eshkol. This gets us into the Six-Day War. I wonder how much of this we can get through tonight.